Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining this Ask Me Anything session. I hope many of you will join soon and we'll have some discussions over different subjects. So this is an AMA session. You can ask anything. That doesn't mean I know how to answer your question, but I will try my best to give my opinion at least in whatever your topic will be. And of course, if the topic is too large, then we might not be able to cover it, because the plan is not to cover only one thing in this hour, but simply going over whatever your ideas and opinions are. I invite you, put your questions in the live chat if you are joining me today. If you have discussions, or if you simply have different opinions, I do encourage you to put them as well in the live chat. And remember that you also have now a Discord server where you can join me, where you can join us, and where we can discuss many things. So let's try to make this community as active as possible and try to learn a lot of things. So while you are putting your questions in the live chat, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to take some of the subjects that have been debated on the Discord server lately, and just take the shortest of the questions, take the simplest of the questions and discuss them, and then of course I can take any of your questions as well. So I actually will start with the questions in the live chat, because I already see that some of you have joined me. Hey, hi everyone, happy to see you here, and I already have a question. So what is my opinion on AI? Okay, this is a very interesting question, because I see that many developers are kind of afraid about if they are gonna lose their jobs or not. And to be honest with you, my opinion is that this will not happen in the near future. So the reason is, well, AI costs some money. No, not to say that, let's say, this is not yet at the level where we can be afraid. So let me actually, you can see me better because I don't have anything to draw now. So talking about AI, first of all, I'm using it. I'm using it now in my development. So I'm quietly, I say, versed with this. I've been using IDE, integrated assistants, multiple types. I've been using chat assistants, multiple kinds of them, and I've been using them for different tasks, from filling in YAML files for API contracts, Open API for example, up to writing unit and integration tests or end-to-end tests. Is it great? Yes, if you know how to manage it. So I feel like it's like a car. If you know how to drive it, it will get you to the destination, and you will definitely make it faster than using your legs in most of the cases. Does it make mistakes? Yes, it does. So let me tell you a story. It was like a couple of days ago, I think, when I have been writing these unit tests with ChatGPT in this case. But it's irrelevant, because again, we talk about AI in general. It would be the same whether you choose Bart, Gemini, or any other assistant, Copilot, whatever you want. So I was using this, and I gave it a method, and I told it, hey, please write me the unit tests for this method. And it was a method with an annotation that was used to automatically generate some circuit breaker some circuit breaker capability. For those of you who don't know what a circuit breaker is, the circuit breaker is a capability where, just imagine you have a fallback, so it kind of manages what happens when some endpoint that you call doesn't respond anymore. You want to somehow intelligently fall back on something else. And I asked ChatGPT, hey, please write me the unit tests, and he wrote unit tests as well. He wrote the unit test, but he wrote a unit test for the annotation, for the circuit breaker annotation. And I asked it, hey, why did you write this method? Because you are writing a unit test, so it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, the test was failing because it didn't make sense, because a unit test its purpose is only to to test the logic inside the method. So it could not test the annotation because the annotation, it was a Spring interpret annotation. So it was definitely a Spring integration tool in that case. And the answer was, well, I just made a mistake, sorry. Yes, you are right. I should have only given you these methods and not that one for the circuit breaker, because that was an integration test. So see, it realized it made a mistake, but I had to tell it made a mistake. So imagine I was just a developer not knowing what I'm doing there, and I would simply try to like copy the things and use them. Well, it didn't really work. So will AI in the future replace us? Maybe, but we don't talk, at least my feeling is it's not the near future, not the next years for certain. First of all, because it's not there yet in terms of what it should do independently. I don't feel that any AI agent now can independently do what a developer does. And secondly, because it costs a lot of money. So it might look simple when you just generate some unit tests and you just use it for some small tasks, and it looks like it's cheap enough, no, because you only do that. But imagine it working as a developer, it would cost quite a lot, significantly a lot more, which I think now would actually be even over what you expect from like paying a developer. So, and the third thing is, anyway, people will still at the moment still feel more comfortable working with people. So will AI replace us in the next years? My bet is no, this will not happen. One more thing, and I'm done with this subject because I cannot stay only on one subject, and I already have so many other questions. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. So another thing is one funny fact that I found out maybe a week ago or a couple of weeks ago. Try to ask your AI assistant to generate a glass full of wine. So tell it, please generate me a picture with a glass full of wine. And you will be surprised that it can't do that. I tried myself. I tried multiple times. I tried making it generating a glass full of wine, and it doesn't know how to do that because there is no picture that has been used to train it to know how a glass full of wine looks like. But this is not the point here. The point is it cannot innovate, because it cannot. If now the AI cannot generate you a glass full of wine, a very simple thing, just because it never saw a glass full of wine. This is a very simple thing to imagine for you as a human. If that's now happening like that, then it cannot innovate more complex tasks either. You see? So that's why at the moment I really am not afraid this will happen soon. Of course, you can have your opinion, so it's just my opinion I'm sharing now. But to make it short, the answer is no. I don't think it will replace us soon. Good, so many. Oh man, so many questions. So let me see where we can find the Discord server link. Now you can find the community section of this channel, and I will try to share it more often, also try to put it more visible. I will think about how to do that. But for now, if you go to the community section of the channel, you will find the Discord link, and you can use it as well. What are the things that you are hoping we would ask you that we never do? Things that I hope you would ask me. I just hope you ask me anything you think I can help with. So I don't have a typical subject. When I'm asking you, hey, when I'm telling you, hey, please ask me questions. Normally, if it's during a specific subject, it's of course I'm asking you to ask me questions from that topic. If it's an ask me anything like today, please ask me anything you think I can be helpful, anything you think my opinion is valuable for. So if you ask me what's my opinion on how to cook, I don't know, what dish, maybe it's not that valuable. I can give you my opinion, but it's not that valuable. But if you find a subject and you think, hey, I know this guy and his opinion might be valuable, do ask that question. I will try to at least share my opinion on that. So what kind of topic would you like to write about Java language? I'm already writing so many topics about Java. So my last book was actually a book on Java fundamentals, but I wrote it in Romanian, in my native language. It was like that to have also the accomplishment of giving something to the students here. So you usually don't find books, technical books written in my native language, because it would be kind of expensive, and authors prefer to write it in English because it sells abroad. But I wanted to have this accomplishment and give something also to the students here. And now I'm writing actually a couple of books. I'm in progress with a couple of books. One is on security in general for developers, which is not my book. It's actually one of my friend's books, but I'm helping with finishing it. And the other is the second edition for troubleshooting Java, because I want to include there also some garbage collector logs, some more things about observability and systems as a whole, and also some AI stuff that I have learned in the past couple of years since I have started using AI. And of course, I've been using AI for a lot of things, including troubleshooting applications. And in some cases, I have found it very useful, and I want to share that with you. So that's my plan now in writing. So I already have this on my desk. I didn't think about something else in the future because I want to finish what I have on my desk first, and then I will think about which would be the next subjects. But by the way, if you want to suggest something, please do it. So I'm very happy to get your suggestions on what books would you like to read in the future, and you think that if I write them would be, I don't know, helpful for you. So I'm having a discussion with a senior colleague, which worked mostly on legacy systems, about checked exceptions. Okay, he insists that we should use checked exceptions, not unchecked. Now, the reason why I consider software development very interesting, and I'm still doing it, is because this is also an art. You don't have, it's not like mathematics. You have some rules, but we still debate and find other things. Of course, my opinion is, and you already know, that checked exceptions are useful only in certain conditions. And I think I have explained that also in some other videos. Checked exceptions are useful in the boundary between a library and the user of the library, where you can just, being a checked exception, and the compiler doesn't allow you compile if you don't treat that. If you throw that checked exception from a library, it's a way to notify the user of the library that this is a must treat exception, without having them look into the documentation, which is valuable because, usually developers, first of all, don't like reading the documentation, and secondly, in most of the cases, in my experience, they find it difficult, and maybe they skip. And maybe now with ChatGPT it's a little bit easier, because you can put the documentation and just say, hey, find me this and that. But still, I don't know, documentation is more difficult. But if you want to have a source code strategy up front to tell the user of your module or library, hey, this is an exception and you must be aware of it, you can make it a checked exception. Otherwise, runtime exceptions, look even at frameworks. Now, Spring Framework, it's one of the things Spring Frameworks did, was to transform checked exceptions into non-checked exceptions wherever it was possible. And one good example is SQL exception. You will not treat SQL exception anywhere when using Spring, for a reason. If you look even deeper into the Spring documentation, you will see that Spring what actually did is to kind of split the SQL exception into multiple exceptions, all of them runtime exceptions, allowing you to treat only what you need and only when you need it. And that's a good example of also of a segregation principle to keep the single responsibility. So that's about checked and non-checked exceptions, and there are good reasons why I consider runtime exceptions, and throughout the time runtime exceptions for me became the first choice. But again, I prefer to keep it an art and say that sometimes experience can be different, and maybe and it can change as well. So maybe in that specific case, for example, checked exception makes sense. I don't know. Which MacBook do you use? A very old one, actually. So I do have an old MacBook. It has a few years already, but it just does the job for me. It has an Intel processor, so it's not M1 or the M family of processors. It's just an old one, but for the moment it's very good, and I don't plan to change it in the future. I usually don't change things if I don't really need them somehow. So, thank you very much. Someone tipped me, so I'm very happy. What can I do in my free time to become a better developer? I can tell you what I'm doing in my free time to become. So I will read the full message just to be sure. I am stuck at a level between junior and senior. Okay, so an intermediate somewhere, and I can't seem to improve. What I'm doing, first of all, I try to read books. You will say, hey, reading books is difficult because well, maybe it's difficult to like think about it all the time. It happens to me, for example, that I only have time during the evening, and during the evening I'm already so tired. I feel I cannot do anything. Sometimes I can't even read like very simple stuff like fiction books, and this is why I apply multiple strategies. So one of my strategy is, when I open a book, I try to read it from the very beginning. But sometimes if I feel that not everything in the book is valuable for me at the moment, I can just skim through it and read whatever I find, try to go and find if I find something useful. This is something I started doing easily after I have discovered O'Reilly Learning. So O'Reilly Learning was a very important change for me, because before it I was able to spend like, I don't know, maybe 400 euros per year, on books. That meant I was able to buy like 10 to 15 technical books, because technical books, they are quite expensive. So when O'Reilly Learning appeared, which by the way at that moment it was actually called Safari Books or something like that was the name. Let me try to log in, because I want to show you what I'm talking about. So this helped me a lot, because first of all, I've created my own subscription, which was costing me like quite the same amount of money per year, but then I was able to go to take whatever book I like. So it's a place where you can find basically anything that has been published. I do certainly recommend it. So you can see it here now. For example, it has many more other things, so it's not only books, but it now has a lot of other things, including the AI assistant to learn and stuff like that. And then if I want to search, I don't know, say just whatever security books, no, and I do have a lot of things here. I can now just choose whatever I want to read, and I start reading it, and I'm not afraid anymore that if I buy a book, it might not fit for my needs. So container security, fine enough. I start reading it, blah 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 blah. I like it. If I don't like it necessarily, or not necessarily I don't like it, but maybe it's not for me, I just try to skim through it, go to the chapters, see if there is anything in the title that might be interesting, try to read it very fast, just to remember that maybe at some point in the future, if I need it, I will be able to go back to it. And of course, if I have a specific book, I can just read it from top to bottom, from cover to cover, and understand everything. But this platform helped me a lot, because I could simply just choose a book, and just for a chapter or just for a section. And that's extremely helpful because I have access to all the technical books published in the world, probably from it's O'Reilly Learning, but it has books like from any publishing house. So for example, even my Spring Security in Action and all my books are here as well. See, so you don't only have books from O'Reilly, you have books from all the publisher, including Manning, A-Press, Pact, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things I can recommend you. So if you want, it gives you access to all the books, so you don't have to like buy a book and read it. You change a little bit the approach to a little bit more agile one. One other thing that helped me easily gain information, gain knowledge is Twitter. Well, of course, it's X now, and I do recommend actually the people are now moving to Blue Sky. But social media like that, social media like Blue Sky or X, because I started following people who I appreciate much, and I always see things from them, and I started always being aware to when a specific version is released, what kind of things people encounter, what kind of errors do they do, what are they complaining about from technology point of view, what solutions did they find for specific problems. And this is again another agile way of keeping you in touch with things, and a very easy one because we are anyway very used to screen time today. So instead of using screen time to watch Instagram pictures, I use screen time to watch through my community on Blue Sky and see what Java problems or architecture problems or whatever other software problems did they encounter. This is a very, very simple way to enhance without even knowing. And of course, then the third thing, and I'm gonna finish with that here, and hopefully this helped you, is I do allocate a few hours per week for studying, and that usually for me happens during the weekend. Why? Because as I already mentioned, in the evening I feel it most of the times impossible to learn something new, just because it almost always happens after many hours of work, and my brain is already burnt out. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a couple of hours during the weekend, and that couple of hours I try to focus on a specific subject, and it can be a subject, for example, that I know it can help me for my work, or maybe it's a subject that I've seen on social media and I'm interested and I want to learn more about it, or simply I've been skimming through books and I've seen something interesting and I left it for the weekend because I didn't have time, but then I'm taking it and I'm trying it more because it's something interesting. And I feel that this approach helps me become better and better. And a fourth one, and I'm finished. I'm done with it. I know I said it was the last one, but I just one just came up to my mind. When working, make sure that if you work for a company, you don't stay too much time on the same project. If possible, change things, change tasks. Don't work on the same microservice for 10 years. That will not help you enhance. And this way, you will learn more and also gain money, because you work for the money. So you put some pressure on yourself to learn something new during work, but you also become better that way. I've seen people, developers sometimes, that make the mistake of staying many years in the same application. Many companies offer you possibilities to change. Like you can just go to your manager and say, hey, I'm already a couple of years on this microservice and I want to learn something new. Can you help me with that? And usually they do. And of course, if that's not the case, then changing companies, it's also a possibility. Because if you only stay in that thing and it becomes a comfort bubble, I think that's how we call it, and you don't get out of your comfort zone, it's not something that will help you become better. Cool. So let's see, so many other questions. Where was I? MacBook, I already answered. Do you use a MacBook? Yes, but again, it's an old one, so I'm not sure if that would help you my configuration. I think it's actually it's something you will never buy, no, because it's too old. I don't even think you will find it anymore. Could you talk about how non-blocking I/O works? Oh, this is quite an interesting subject. So there are capabilities in the Java ecosystem that allow you to read uh, files and to operate with files in a non-blocking way. And in the majority of the cases, they simply allow you go through the file, sometimes by making a copy of the file of the specific file. It's kind of like a synchronization, so it makes a copy of the data, allowing the data to be changed while you read it at the same time, so giving you the opportunity to work with the data that has been read at a specific time. But this is some approach which I hope you don't make a confusion between NIO and non-blocking, because NIO is not a non-blocking IO. No, many make this confusion, but NIO, the Java NIO package, that's not an abbreviation from non-blocking. So I'm not sure exactly if you want me to talk about non-blocking, really, like how non-blocking file system capabilities work, which is mainly like usually working on copies of the data, or randomly accessed data, depending the case, or you want me to talk about NIO, which is just simple the new IO access capabilities that have been introduced in Java 7 and 8 afterwards with NIO 2. No. Meanwhile, I'm gonna go through other questions as well. So I'm using OAuth to login in Spring. My front end is client side, so I need to redirect the user to the origin of the client side app after. Yeah, clearly this is how authorization code flow works. No, so the client redirects to the authorization server. The authorization server redirects back to the client after successful login. Now the user gets redirected to root of Spring. Well, it redirects the user to whatever you tell it to redirect. So remember, you have a configuration, and in the OAuth 2 configuration, in your authorization server, you have what's called redirect URIs, a list of, or a set of redirect URIs. You might have multiple redirect URIs, no? So that's where you choose which URIs can your authorization server redirect your client, your user to back to the client. So if your client, well, what I'm understanding here is that your authorization server, doesn't correctly redirect to your client, and it uses a different URL, it's because of a misconfiguration. Most likely you have to go to your authorization server, see what redirect URLs have you configured there. In most cases it's just one, and that's basically the redirect URI to which the authorization server, Keycloak or Okta or whatever authorization server, even a custom one, will redirect your client to. Structure concurrency in Java versus Kotlin coroutine. Well, I'm not really an expert in Kotlin, so I would prefer to skip this question, preferably, because I might give you an answer which you might not necessarily find it valuable in the end. So let me try not sharing an opinion on something on which I'm not comfortable with, and that's Kotlin. I'm very comfortable on Java and even on concurrency in Java, but I'm not necessarily comfortable with Kotlin at the moment because I haven't used it like for some time, and things might have changed since I have used it last time. Remember that I don't know absolutely everything myself. What do you think in DevOps? I learned Dev in Java and Spring, and in parallel I learned DevOps. Okay, cool. So DevOps, I think it's a very important part of software development and deployment. So it's a way to make our connection between the operationals and the development side. is that middle layer that helps developer easily put things in production, for example, or on their environments without struggling themselves with too much information on what operational is, and without needing operational guys to know what development is. So it's basically that middle layer that creates a connection between development and operationals. I think it's very important. I think DevOps will continue to exist, and it even evolves now a lot, and the technologies we use in DevOps evolve a lot. I think it's something that, from my point of view, part of technologies and how DevOps work should be in the knowledge of every developer. So for example, you should know what CI/CD is. You should know and should understand what tool you use, why do you use a certain tool to deploy your application, how does it work. You know, when I'm delivering technical interviews, in many cases I'm asking and I expect a developer, especially intermediate plus developers, juniors maybe they don't have enough experience, no, but intermediate plus developers, I expect they also understand the ecosystem in which they work. So I expect that they understand the business of the application they are working, and also the procedures that they are using for working, which might be different from an organization to the other, but they need to understand how they work. And it's a very big deal for me if some developer is a candidate for a job and I'm the technical interviewer, and I ask them and they know pretty well how to answer me different questions about the Java, but when I ask them, hey, how do you work in your project? What kind of team do you have? How do you deploy your applications? Where do you deploy your applications? And so on and so forth. And they seem not to know that. That's a very big red flag for me. So because I find that with experience, it's almost impossible for a versed developer to also understand the part of DevOps, and especially at least the part they touch with. What CI/CD tool do you use? GitLab Actions? Do you use GitHub Actions? Maybe you use Jenkins, maybe you use another tool. I don't know, but you need to know it. It's almost impossible you don't touch it at all. So yes, continue learning DevOps, because that will definitely help you. I mean, even if you will not necessarily be a DevOps guy in the end, understanding at least how the DevOps part works in your project is essential, and I think every developer should also be involved in that. AI may not replace us today, but companies think it does. I'm not sure necessarily do all the companies think AI replaces us. I didn't find I mean, what I think is, because maybe you will tell me, hey, but I see that there are not so many opportunities now that the AI appeared, and is that caused by the fact that companies think that AI will replace us? Maybe some companies do, but I think it's more of a problem of how do we continue now that we have AI. What is our plan for the future? I think this AI like stroke the companies, like they KO'd the companies, like they punched somehow into the strategy they had, and because it kind of appeared from one day to another, no, and now you see some things are possible, and you wonder as a company, as an organization, how can I use this? And then the problem is, because you don't know how, and you need to find a new strategy, it creates a pause now in the development as well, because probably majority of the company, they have simply stopped what they were doing because they are not sure that what they are doing it's still something that would be helpful in the near future. So now I think this period of time is a little bit short for us, also because the companies now have to decide a new strategy. Once they will decide a new strategy, which definitely will involve AI, jobs will also be back for software developers, because someone will have to implement those applications that use AI in a way or another. And yet AI at the moment, and not in the near future, I don't think will simply just be able to write applications and innovate. No, exactly what we were talking a little bit earlier. Personally, I'm burnt out. I don't like AI programming. I don't have the interest to how should we pivot with a computer science degree. As I would say, my advice is, well, what do you mean AI programming? Like using ChatGPT or an AI assistant for programming? I think it may be useful, but we need to learn how to use it properly, because it's not like, hey ChatGPT, write me the capability. I give you the Jira ticket and please write me the capability. That this moment it doesn't work. You are just driving and you use your AI as a tool, and you need to know how to use it properly to enhance your time. In my case, it worked. It took me like I do use it for a couple of years since this stuff appeared, and with time I've learned to use it in many subjects and many things I'm doing with my life. So I'm using it for learning foreign languages. I'm using it for programming. I'm using it for searching on the internet sometimes, for searching some inspiration sometimes, and in many cases I think it actually helped me. But I don't think that it now can simply just do everything for you, so you still have to use it as a tool. Do you see ourselves working in the AI industry in the future? I think I see ourselves working with AI in the future. Not necessarily all of us will implement AI, will create AI. I think we will start to collaborate more and more with AI throughout the time. What kind of a project do you expect a junior developer portfolio to have? An example would be good if possible. Most junior developers don't even have projects, but I would expect. So look, this is what I did when I was when I was myself a junior developer. You know, I've tried to imagine I have an organization that I need to help somehow, and I need to create a software for it. So for example, I just took an idea of what and how can I enhance with what I have now, restaurants, for example, at the moment, because restaurants were the only kind of business I could understand myself being quite simple for someone external to the business understand the business. Now you as a restaurant client, you can imagine that how the restaurant works. Now you go as a client there, you place your order, there is a waiter serving you, there is a kitchen behind the scenes, people taking the orders and solving them and then delivering them to you to a table. No, and I try to implement something that today exists, but many years ago it didn't. No, the application where you can order from your own table. I've seen that in many places around the world now, but at that time was kind of innovation. So I just thought about, hey, how can I do some innovation at that time? And I implemented this stuff for myself. I never did anything useful with it, but I've learned so many things. And that was kind of my portfolio as a junior developer. Also, for my bachelor degree, what I did at the time was implementing kind of a mobile banking. It was the time when smartphones were just appearing. So basically it was new stuff, mobile banking. So it was again part of innovation. So I tried myself to research and create such an application before something like that existed on the market. So what I advise you is think about what you see around. Do you see any business that you could help innovate with? even if the idea has been already implemented, you can still try to implement it. And what's more important than what the application does is actually how you write that application. It's very important. If you use this as presentation, as a presentation of yourself and your knowledge when you go to a technical interview, I think it's very important to prove that you understood pretty well how to use the technologies and the frameworks that you use in that application, meaning that the code should be clean, should properly use the frameworks. You should be able to explain what kind of problems have you encountered and how you dealt with them, and that will drive you through different things, like even troubleshooting, using the frameworks, managing your work. No, that's very important. It creates a sense of yourself and of your own time. I think that's it. I'm currently learning Spring from your playlist. That's 5 years ago. Does it still worth to learn, or is too old? I think it does. I mean, it's a fundamentals framework, so I'm not even sure that there are things that really changed there. Maybe there are a few, but I don't think so. You can also try the new playlist on Spring Fundamentals. Now I'm doing based on my Spring Start here, but even that one that you are watching, things didn't change that much. Maybe I will recreate one in the future as well, but you can trust it, still trust it, and learn from it, because, well, even in practice, do you imagine that all the companies really have always the latest versions of Spring in all their applications? I bet that 5 years ago it's like almost nothing. It's not even legacy yet, to be honest. I mean, I do think something is old when I see it using like Spring without Spring Boot and with XML configuration. That's old, and I still see that. Even I still see that. But Spring Boot 2 point something, that's something that still exists in many organizations. So learning it will definitely not hurt you. Will only make you stronger. How to deal with severe burnout? Oh, I will tell you a story. I've been there some years ago. So severe burnout when you love programming but hate corporate software development. So I was there as well. I was in some project, some point where I was like doing so many things that I was even solving bugs and I know, building new features when I was in transfer in the airport. So if I had a transfer, for example, where I had a couple of hours spare time, I was just going to a bar in the airport, waiting for my second flight, and opening my laptop and trying to figure out whatever I can do. Turns out that progressively I didn't see it coming, to be honest, but progressively this brought me to a burnout that made me also progressively more and more aggressive with myself, more aggressive when I was speaking with other people. It creates some distance between me and my friends, me and my family, and so on. So when I realized that, I've actually realized that the only solution was to simply quit that organization. So I simply quit the project. And when I started again, I took just a few weeks for myself to rest and forget about everything. And then I just started new. And when I started new, I said, okay, from now on, I will not accept things like working, like, for example, overtime. I'm sometimes doing that, but they are exceptions. So if it happens like 2-3 times a year to be needed to write a bit more, for example, for a week or two, that's fine. But then I never do that for more than that, because it's very dangerous for health. And I know many people who weren't there, they might say, hey, how is that? It's just, come on, you can't die from working. No, you can't die from burning out. But it's not like that. Burnout is not just, I don't know, it doesn't mean you are lazy or something. It's just a situation where you psychologically are in kind of a deep state like depression, and you don't know how to get out of there. And in my experience, at least, the only way I could have gotten out of there was simply change the environment. Changing the environment immediately took me out of there. And of course, then a little bit of self organization. Just, you cannot, even if you change the environment, if you then use the same habits, it definitely will not help you. You have to actively and proactively change your habits, and that's basically what I recommend you. Can observability affect the performance? It does, yes, and it is okay to fully use it on production. Yes and yes. So does it affect the performance? Yes, it does affect the performance, but does it affect it at a cost where the compromise doesn't make sense? Usually not, or at least not with applications for which Java is a technology that works fine, because in the end Java as technology is not native language, and you expect some slowness, and we talk here about milliseconds, no? But that really doesn't make a difference for applications you usually designed with Java, no? So observability, like for example frameworks, no? Does Spring add any overhead on the application? Yes, inversion of control in the end means reflection behind the scenes and dynamic proxies, and those reflection and dynamic proxies also cause their own latency. But it's the compromise. So we know it adds some latency, but it's a cost that makes sense for the compromise. It makes more sense for us to have observability in production than have your application running a few dozens of milliseconds faster. That's the case usually. I don't think I have ever encountered the situation where I would say, hey, let's stop the observability because it's more important to have performance. I prefer to have observability because in most of the applications, or all the applications where I've seen that and worked on, the observability latency added, the overhead added wasn't that bad. You couldn't actually even see it, as a user, because you do have several other things that add latencies to your application, such as queries on the database, for example, or access to files. Those are definitely easier to see. Those are things that can sometimes take seconds. So observability from this point of view, it's almost nothing. Planning for a second edition of Spring Start here? Yes, I actually do. And I will probably start it if the editors will allow me to do that, and hopefully they will, after this fall, after this autumn, because that's when Spring Boot 4 and Spring 7 will be released, if I correctly remember. So I expect that I will create a Spring Start here new version for Spring Boot 4 and Spring 7 at that time. Meanwhile, I'm telling you from now, so changes in the fundamentals, changes in the basics are not that big. So Spring Start here, this edition we still have now, it's still very good, and it will still help you a lot. So if you want to read the book, read it, it will help you. If you want to follow me, I have now this, I'm in progress with this playlist where I'm discussing the book section by section, chapter by chapter. Do follow me, because these things, most of them will not change, will be the same with Spring Boot 4, because we talk about basics and fundamentals. I tried using configuring Spring Authorization Server written API using OAuth client and create authentication, generate tokens. How can I troubleshoot the authorization request not found? Oh man, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's I actually had a discussion with some guys from the project, and I told them that myself because I had this problem. No, you don't set the parameter, and then it's like it doesn't work, but you have no idea why. And I don't really have a very good advice for you now other than just enabling logs. So try to enable the logs at the debug level. You will see more things. That still might not be helping you, but now with ChatGPT maybe you can take those logs, because there will be a lot of logs now, and maybe you will not be able to search easily through them. But take the logs and then try to put them in ChatGPT and ask about if there's something it can help with, like maybe filtering those to find your problem. And but I'm making you aware, in most of my cases the only solution really was putting a debug breakpoint in the framework itself and trying to figure out what's wrong. And sometimes, yes, it took me a lot of time just to figure out that I was not sending a parameter correctly, because that was the case. But honestly, I don't really have for you a better answer. So that's what I managed to do. Let me see. So I was here at the troubleshooting, and then what is the strategy and you follow when you have studied a big software? And you have the access to a source code. Fine, very good, very nice question. I love it. I love it because it's very related also to some of the experience I'm sharing in troubleshooting Java. No, I don't have a copy here because I've just gave the last. But in troubleshooting Java, I'm explaining that I find myself in many cases when I'm dealing with large code bases, and that happens pretty often. How do I investigate it? No, because imagine that. So I'm a consultant, and there is an organization. They call me and they ask me, "Hey, can you take a look at this source code and tell us what we are doing wrong?" And maybe you ask yourself, "How do I do that?" Because I need to understand the source code first and how the application executes. And then I use different tools. First of all, I of course open it and try to read it. I try to find out what's the design. If there is a design, no, all applications sometimes are very spaghetti code, so you will not even understand their design easily. When I'm going, so I try to understand at the first glance what the application looks like. After that, I try to like literally use the application, and sometimes I'm trying to debug it. And in some cases, I don't even find where to start the debugging from. So I'm using a profiling tool like Visual VM, for example, or JProfiler, and I'm screening, I'm x-raying the application, see what executes behind the scenes, and try to figure out, I'm sampling the execution, and I'm trying to figure out what really happens there. And yes, it's a huge amount of work, but that's what I'm paid for. So yeah, it's not easy. It's not like I have a magic or a magical solution where you can simply understand big code bases. Sometimes they have repetitions, very old code bases. They have all the possible anti-patterns like big ball of mods, God objects, spaghetti code everywhere, lasagna code, too many layers, phantom objects. They don't use immutability. No, it's horrible to go through them. But when that's your job, now you do your best. And in my case, of course, it will always be reading the code first, and then secondly using a debugger and a profiling tool to sample the execution and see what I can understand from the application. And of course, then I'm trying to put down everything I find, try to figure out what can be enhanced. trying to figure out why things have been done like that. Sometimes you have to ask, hey, why did you implement that this way? Because you'll find out that in many cases, developers really had intelligent reasons why they did something that looks like an anti-pattern for you at the first glance because you don't know the application, but they say, hey, this happened and that's why we implemented that way, and we didn't figure out an easier and faster solution for that, because if we were to apply the strategy you are telling us, it would have taken us so much time that we couldn't have delivered it. So things like that are usually very difficult, but and in many cases this also comes with experience. So I get the exception whenever I attempt. Okay, I think this is still about the login, but I'm again, it's not something that I can. I'm just telling you an idea on how to debug that. It's probably impossible for me to tell you exactly that error you have, because well, it can be any of the million situations that can cause that error. Okay, let's go even further. So what should I learn next? I just complete Spring Boot, Spring Web, Spring Security. I've learned reactive programming. That's fine. Can I learn reactive programming or microservices? Reactive programming, if you really like it, do learn it. If I were you, I would postpone it until I really see I need it, because it's kind of a corner subject. Microservices, however, yes, I do advise you learn them, and you have the microservices patterns from Sam Neumann, no? Monolith to microservices, no, microservice patterns, sorry, from Chris Richardson. Monolith to microservices from Sam. Many good literature on that. And remember, I was actually telling you earlier that if you have this O'Reilly Learning, I'm not even paid to make them, so I don't believe that they give me anything, but it's really a tool I'm using. Like now, I think I'm using it for 10 years. I'm using this before it was O'Reilly. I'm using this since it was called Safari Books Online. No, but look how nice it is, because I'm just searching for my subject here, and I find a lot of things, including video tutorials here. Yes, it costs money, unfortunately, so it's not like my YouTube channel where you find everything for free, but it's still only free content is not always enough, no? So it's many books I didn't even read. For example, I think I've read the Building Microservices from Sam. Of course, the Chris Richardson's microservices patterns, a very important one. And then you have different other topics put either in books or video tutorials. So try it. It really makes sense. It costs, but it really makes sense. If it is something I would put money on my education, is this kind of a platform, because it gives me access to everything. So yes, microservices, go for it. Reactive programming, you can leave it aside, but microservices, cloud, microservices, these are things that will still be on the table for many years from now on. They are just at the beginning of their existence, from my point of view. They are just like AI. Even if cloud is something that we've heard for like years already, it's still something I consider very new. Which Java framework do you use the most at work? Probably the most to use are Spring with its ecosystem and Hibernate. So if I were to make a list of top frameworks I'm using, top frameworks I've seen in the projects throughout the past years, Hibernate and Spring are probably everywhere. I might not have seen too many projects that don't use them. I've seen other Java projects or frameworks used together with them, such as MicroProfile, Jakarta implementations. But Hibernate and Spring ecosystem, they are almost omnipresent. So if your question is, what should I put more focus on because I want to be relevant in my work? I think it's impossible to fail with Spring and Hibernate. So that this should be the first topics you learn as after Java fundamentals, and I would take them in parallel. I want to make a career change from the banking sector to IT. I'm 37, I've taken a course, built more portfolio, and I want to enter the field. No one is calling. Well, unfortunately, Bogdan, I think I was saying it earlier, we are not really today in the best time frame. What I mean is that with this AI, organizations are now at a turning point where they don't know what to invest in further. So we wait for organizations to find their strategy, and then my guess is that jobs will start to be again open. But because of that, it's kind of they kind of froze everything, and that's why in most cases it impacted it mainly the junior developers. And when I say junior, I mean junior developers or people like you trying to entry level. Maybe entry level it's a better word. Okay, entry level developers, because when there is not enough work, well, usually you stay with the most relevant developers that they can get you out of every situation with their experience, and you don't employ the entry levels anymore. This will be a very bad thing in the future. This will create probably a gap in the future, because someone might ask themselves, if you don't employ entry level developers now, who will be the seniors in 5 years from now on? So that's a very important. I think many organizations fail seeing this, and they will face this problem in the future. But once this period of time of freeze, let's call it like that, ends, I guess that there will again be, and we might, because of the fact that we didn't employ enough entry levels now, we might even have not enough entry levels somewhere in the future when this period of time will end. So my advice for you is, for the moment, keep your job where you are, but continue learning. Learn every week. Find yourself, like see the advice I gave a little bit earlier in this session. Continue learning, because there will come the time when you can make this switch, and you will find a job for sure at that time. So I've been trying to deep dive into Spring security, learn about configuring users, architecture. I want to know how HTTP security class and understand its role. Well, HTTP security, it's a very difficult question, actually. It's more difficult than it looks like, because HTTP security class is first of all, is there from the kind of the very beginning of Spring security, and it changed a lot. Like you see it now, and it still is there, and it has changed somehow to an injected parameter in the security filter chain method, just because it's kind of the backbone of the application. But what I can advise you, let's take this subject in another time, because I will have already spent more than 1 hour already, and I will have to close on the session. But being that you have so many questions, I will definitely recreate another Ask Me Anything soon. What I can advise you till then is try to debug on it. The best way I've learned frameworks until now is debugging on their source code. Just try to find some time, if you are interested, see what methods are called and what is the stack trace of the calling the methods, and how are they used, just by putting breakpoints and trying to follow the flow and understand what happens there. And then at some point we might have time to also do that. So friends, I will definitely not have time now of so many questions. I'm so sorry, to be honest. I don't have time to answer all of this, but literally I think I have 3 hours, so I will have to close, being that we finished already this hour, and we are already talking. We've been talking about many other things, but I will definitely create. So keep your questions. Join the Discord channel. join the Discord server, okay, because you can place your questions there as well. And keep your questions and definitely put them in the next Ask Me Anything session, because I will create one very soon. Again, another similar event. It looks like many of you have joined, and I'm very happy because of that. So I'm very happy. And again, please don't hesitate to follow the next streams. Until then, I will have to quit now, with my heart broken that I didn't answer all the questions. I really hope I will be able to answer more soon on the Discord server or in the next videos. And I'm gonna wave goodbye, and I see some of you have already also said goodbye. I'm also saying goodbye, and talk to you as soon as possible, because I'm very happy to be here again live with you and talk about so many other things. Thank you very much, friends, for being here. Thank you very much for following, and looking forward to seeing you on all the other channels. Cheers.